Well, hello and welcome to Being Catholic Media. I'm glad you have joined me today. Well, today we have three special guests. We're joined by the Benedict daughters of the Divine Will to share more about the Divine Will and the impact it has on their lives and why it's such an important movement for today. So welcome, sisters. Great to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
Hello. Hello, Scotland.
All the way over there in Medjugorje. So we're very glad that you are here to share with us again about the Divine Will. And perhaps you can kick off and share a bit about your order, when it began, and the history of you getting involved with the Divine Will.
Okay, well, it was founded on April 12, 2011 by Bishop Luigi Negri. I was a poor Clare for 33 years before, and I was given a sabbatical after being in charge of the monastery for 9 years. When they elected someone else, they gave me a sabbatical, and I went on a retreat during that sabbatical time with my spiritual director, who was a Benedictine monk. And in praying together with him and through some private revelation and with another monk that was part of that community, we discerned to start this new community of Divine Will or Divine Will community, Benedictine, it would be Benedictine. And so we came, what we felt was God wanted us to have a men's community, a women's community. We also have oblates, Benedictine oblates of Divine Will. There's over about 800 of them in the US mostly. These are lay people who are reading the Divine Will writings for 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes a day. That's all you have to do to be an oblate, and to really live your Catholic faith to the fullest. And so people become oblates. They just go through before the Blessed Sacrament. It's just between them and God. It's like a de Montfort consecration. You don't have meetings. You just continue to live your Catholic faith and read the writings. It keeps people on board reading the volumes on a daily basis. That's what's good about being an oblate. So, we came to Italy. We found the bishop, the men's community, the women's community was founded 4 years before the men's community. Now we have 12, they have about 13, 13 monks now. And they're live about 40-minute ride away from where we are. We're in Talamello, Italy. They're in Carpegna. And then we have another community. We have opened a second house. The bishop asked us to send some sisters to San Marino at the cathedral there, at the basilica. And so we have 3 sisters living there, taking adoration in a little chapel where Saint Leo and Saint Marino, they used to sleep in these 2 little caves in that chapel. So they take adoration there, and we promote adoration. We have adoration. Each sister takes 2 hours of adoration a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. We also read the Divine Will writings, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon. We live a full monastic life. We have the whole divine office we do. We try to pray the at least 15 decade rosary a day, since Our Lady asked for that here in Medjugorje. So we try to follow Our Lady's messages, Medjugorje messages, and truly live a monastic life. Wow. We have a kind of a happy, joyful community. We're not rigid in any way. We are kind of relaxed, and anybody want to share anything about that?
Before we go, I guess I should have really asked you at the top of this interview, perhaps you can share your names with our audience and who you are.
Okay, I'm Mother Gabrielle Marie.
I'm Sister Maria Scholastica. I'm Sister Maria Benedicta.
And you all are from...
I am Sister Maria Maddalena.
I am Gloria Marie.
I am Sister Dora.
Well, it's wonderful to have you all here, as I said earlier on, but perhaps we can, share with our audience how Luisa Piccaretta has inspired your ministry.
Well, I started reading the writings in 1998. I was a novice mistress then, and one of my novices, she was reading the book. She had come in as a postulant. She had belonged to a Divine Will group in Florida, and she came in with the books and she asked me about it. So I said, well, I'll read it and see what it's all about. I fell in love with it. So when she was invested, her grandmother came, who was very involved in the Divine Will. She began to send me tapes from conferences, Divine Will conferences that were being held in America. She began to send the books to me as they were being translated. At that point, they didn't have a lot of books translated in English. I think they only had not even the first 19 books all translated yet. And as time went, all 36 volumes were translated in English. So I just fell in love with it. It's the divine will takes you into a place where you can just really, really, really fall in love with our Lord. It's all about love, him loving us and us loving him back. And, as a religious, we try to practice virtue. We try to be transformed. We try to live a holy life. But when we're doing it in our human will, it's difficult, but when you do it and invite him to come and do it in you, to live your life, his life in you, to relive he loves us so much, he wants to relive his life in each one of us. Yeah. And as we call him into all of our activities through the day, we find it easier to practice virtue. So I found that in my religious life, that after I began to call him into everything that I was doing, virtue became easier because he practices the virtue in you. And the more you do that, the more you shrink, the littler you become, you die to yourself. And as you die and shrink, he gets bigger in you. So, and so it's really trying to be aware of the divine indwelling, the Trinity dwelling in our souls, the Trinity doing everything in and through us. Yeah. And to be aware of his presence. We're walking tabernacles. And then when you realize him present within you, you realize his presence within everybody else. Yes. So you find it easier to love others. You fall in love with other people in a way you never did before. Everything becomes more beautiful. When I started reading the volumes, nature became more beautiful. I'd sit outside and read it, and I'd watch the little chipmunks in the creek near where I would sit every day to read the writings, and everything was so delightful. Nature came alive to me. So that's a big difference I found, and I found that just things in my life didn't bother me the same anymore. Life was easier. You don't get upset so much with other people. Things just don't bother you the same. It's a whole different life. It's a gift. The greatest gift that God could give us is to live in his divine will.
I think the previous interview I had with Kathy, we were discussing that it no longer is about us. It's about him.
Right.
And it takes practice. It takes a bit of time. It doesn't happen overnight. And you mentioned there, sister, that, the core message about the divine will is love, So perhaps you can share a little bit more about what you mean about that.
Well, it's, God loves us so much. If we understood how much he loves us, we'd die of joy. We couldn't live, So his love is hidden a bit from us, but he wants to show us his love in everything. He told Luisa, he said he wants us to put our I love you on everything he created. And he told her, if you have a desire to put an I love you on every leaf, on every tree, to me, you don't have to go with a pencil to do it. Your desire, the desire of your heart, becomes a reality. He sees the desires of our hearts. He knows our desires better than we do. He understands our motives better than we do. And I think in trying to live in the divine will, we always have to pray for the right motive. Why do we want to live in his divine will? Because we want to give glory to ourselves or to God, So we have to pray for the right motive always, that we want to live in this to give God the honor and glory he deserves, not because you want a higher place in heaven. That's a good thing. That's going to happen, by living in his divine will. But you want to live in his divine will because it glorifies God, gives him honor and glory. He loves us so much. He wants us to be with him for all eternity, more than we want to be with him. And so he wants us to be grateful for all of his gifts. Everything is gift. All of creation is gift. Yes. Sacraments, the church. So we have the gift of creation, redemption, all of the sacraments. And now we have the gift of the divine will, sanctification, that he wants us to be sanctified and live the life that Adam and Eve lived before the fall. And that's what he's trying to bring us to through these writings. And he said, you can't really live in this unless you read the writings, read them over and over again. I've read them all maybe 12 times, even more than that now, yes. And every time I read them, it's like I never read them before. And he teaches you something new all the time because he knows we need things repeated over and over again to understand the one truth, So throughout the 36 volumes, you find each truth repeated over and over again in different ways. But it's all about, the whole thing is about how much he loves us. He loves us so much. He just wants to give us this gift more than we want it, you know. And as you live this life, as you live more and more in his divine will, your joy increases. Because when you stop thinking of yourself and you just think of him and dwell on him, you're happy. But we're our worst enemy. You know, the more we think of ourselves, the more unhappy you become. Yeah. And humility is perfect joy. And nothingness, realizing your nothingness is beyond humility. And as you live this life, you begin to realize more and more your nothingness, and that he is everything. And even though everyone is living in the divine will, in a sense, they can't function without God's will living in them. You couldn't breathe without the divine will. Your heart would not beat without the divine will beating and keeping you alive. But God just wants us to realize it, to be aware of his presence within us, keeping us alive. Our blood circulating in our bodies is all divine will. But he just wants us to be grateful for the gifts that he's giving us and to acknowledge those gifts. Yeah. Anybody want to share anything about that?
Yes, sisters, perhaps sisters, you can share with us as well how it has affected your lives personally. How do you see the divine will working out in each one of you?
I just would like to expand a little bit further what Mother said earlier. You know, Mother, you said about love and, you know, how we become nothing and we become everything in a way that if we live in the divine will. In my personal experience, this is how I imagine, because I have a very simple mind. And I think of myself being a religious, being married to Jesus. And in the marriage covenant, it is exchange of self, it's exchange of love. So if I give my human will to Jesus, I become nothing because I gave all to him, my human will. And in exchange of that, or in my nothingness, because I let go of everything that I have, my human will, God will replace that with his divine will. So in a way, by being nothing, like Mother said earlier, it becomes, then we can have everything because it's no longer us who does these things, but it's Jesus himself.
He gives us everything. It's all God's gift and he gives us everything.
For me, the first time I read the divine, I just read an interaction, I think in volume 2, between Jesus and Luisa. And really what got me was the relationship that they had, how personal Jesus was. You just saw him in a different way, you know, than anywhere else, you know, and that touched me deeply, even though I didn't really understand everything. And no one really explained anything to me. We just read a little bit, but that it really moved me. And so the more I read and the more I understood, like I was blown away by God's goodness, you know, and his generosity and his love. And so the more I would read it, the more I would understand it or try to grasp all of this. You fall in love with the Lord in a way that it changes your life. And you love, like Mother said, you know, you love people more. You love the church more. You appreciate everything more. And that's what he wants. He wants us to be grateful. And when you're grateful, even the little flower said this, gratitude is the key to happiness. You know, so when you're grateful to the Lord about all these little things that nobody even pays attention to, you know, and you do it for other people. So you're not even doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for all your brothers and sisters so that he can receive the honor and glory that he deserves. And you're doing it in a way that he really actually receives what he deserves because you're asking him to do it in you. You're asking for his will, for his love, and you're taking it and giving it back to him on behalf of everybody. So it just makes you, for me, it makes me so happy to be able to glorify the Lord in the way that he deserves. You know what I mean?
And just reading the volumes, you get a joy, you get a happy, you know, and I was just reading right before I came to this, to meet with you, you know, and I just was so delighted to just read and read, you know, and I'm trying to read the calendar book now. They put all the volumes into everything that was ever written on January 1st throughout the volumes is in one book. So you got the January book, the February book, and some of them are very long. So sometimes it takes you maybe an hour and a half to finish the whole day, you know, and I feel in doing that, I get even more delighted, you know, because it's, It's just you never get bored with it. You never get
No.
bored. You never get tired of reading the same thing over. You don't even remember reading that. When you go back, you go, well, I don't remember this, and it makes you happy. You just, it's like no other book. I'd say after the scriptures, the scriptures, this is actually, they call this the Testament of Sanctification. This, God does everything in threes. There's the Old Testament, the New Testament, and this is a testament of sanctification. This is the biggest of the testaments because it's 36 books, but it's wonderful. I encourage people too to read the scriptures with that. Have to continue to read the scriptures because God speaks to your heart through that too, and we're always learning more and more through that. That's another book that you never give up. You always read the scriptures over and over again. We just do the same thing with the Divine Will writings.
Well, I was introduced to the Divine Will through Kathy, and I've started reading the books, and I'm just so filled with joy. I said to a friend yesterday, I said, I feel like I'm on a honeymoon period because the readings are just mind-blowing. That they're so authentic because what the Lord gives Luisa and the way he talks about suffering and so forth. It's such an exciting time to live in as a Catholic because it's ushering in this era of peace. And for me, that is what we all need right now, is we need that peace in our lives. We need to focus away from the negativity of COVID and all this and what's happening in our world, the fuel and all that. We need to realign ourselves with God's plan, which is the divine will. So it's just wonderful to hear you talking like this because that is how I'm feeling. And I want our viewers to really take a hold of the divine will and start to get into it because I think personally, it's one of the greatest gifts of our time.
Yeah, and all that's happening in the world right now, we don't have to be worried about it. Our Lord told Luisa, everything has to fall apart before it rises again. The church and the world has to be crucified before it rises again. And then the divine will reign. He's trying to bring us back to the time before the fall. And we'll have perfect joy and perfect love for one another. But before that happens, he has to start at ground zero. Everything has to just fall apart. And then he's going to recreate it in a way that it's never been before. The church will be more beautiful than it's ever been. The world will be more beautiful than it's ever been. But the only way things are gonna change, abortions will be gone. All of this crazy stuff with the one sex marriage and all these crazy things going on, that won't change until God changes it. And he's going to change it through the crucifixion, I think, through the cross, through people suffering and the chastisement. And so we should want the chastisement to happen so that the people in the future, the generations in the future, will have a better life to live in this world. It won't be the same. But if God doesn't do that, things will just continually getting worse, continue to get worse, So we have to want it to happen. We should want it to happen. We should want that so that abortions will stop, that, that there will be no confusion about male and female and all of these crazy things that poor children today are having to grow up in and being so confused. We should want God to come and straighten up everything and change things. So we shouldn't be afraid of chastisement, which we should want it to come, even if we have to suffer in the process. We should be willing to give our lives for the world to be a better place to live in the future.
And I think the one thing about the divine will too, it teaches us not to fear because, we're kind of living in a very fearful society, wouldn't you? I'm sure everybody would agree with it. But the great thing about, I think, the divine will, sisters, is that it centers us. It centers our spirit and it centers it on Christ. And the divine will for me, since thanks be to God for Kathy, when she did introduce it to me, it almost set my soul on fire. And I knew that we had to focus on this more so than ever and bringing this to our audience as much as we possibly can, because it is also an exciting time to be a Catholic. It's exciting. Yeah. Do you agree? Yesterday, for example, the church, I think, over the last 2 years has realized that we need to really do something more for our faith. We need to embrace it more because maybe we've taken it for granted, over the years, and with COVID not being able to participate in the Eucharist, etc. And yesterday attending the whole Eucharistic procession, really stirred me, and it really showed me that this is all part of God's divine will. All of this, even the bad stuff, because out of the bad stuff, as you say, sister, it purges us and it prepares our soul, and we shouldn't be afraid of suffering, sisters. Wouldn't you agree, sister? We shouldn't be afraid of what is to come, because in the Lord, he will mind us and he will shelter us for what's to come, regardless of what it is.
There's nothing really bad that can happen to us. If you die, you go to heaven, be with him. If he keeps you alive, he's going to take care of you here in this life. So, what is there to be concerned about? We live for him and him alone. We're not going to be afraid. We won't be. There's nothing to fear. And Our Lady says that even in the messages here in Mestre Gloria, to follow the messages, you have nothing to fear. Do what she tells you to do. She gives a prescription of how to have joy, how to have happiness in your life. But this is the greatest gift, the divine will. He said that to Luisa. This is the greatest gift, and this is greater than redemption. He says, because his will willed redemption. This is greater than his mercy. His will willed his mercy. So, his will willed his justice. So everything is God's will. So his will is the greatest thing. His will willed creation. His will willed redemption. Yeah. So he wills us to be with him more than we long to be with him. And he loves us in a way that we can't imagine. And this is such a beautiful, beautiful gift from God to show his love to us, that he gave us these writings during this time. Like you said, this is the greatest time to be alive. We've got these writings, to embrace these writings, to don't just have them on the shelf, but read them every day. And you can see as you read them, your day is going to be a lot different. On days when you don't read it, you feel the difference. But when you read it, you get a joy, you get a peace, you're more loving. You see Christ more around you and people around you, because you're seeing him within yourself. As you call him into all of your activities, and you're seeing him within you have to see him within yourself before you see him within others. You have to be patient with yourself before you can be patient with others. But he teaches you how to be that way. This priest, a friend of mine, who really helped me in the beginning to get a lot of the volumes. He was always sending the volumes to me at the monastery of all the sisters who wanted to read the writings. He told me when he got these writings, he was so excited because all of his life he wanted to be a saint, but he didn't have what it took to be a saint. He wasn't penitential. The saints seemed to have all this grace, special graces for certain missions that God had given them, and he didn't have any of that. But when he read this and realized that he could be even a greater saint than the saints of the past, because the saints in the past lived God's will. But living in his will is different than doing his will. They did his will. The saints did his will. But now he's asking us to allow him to do his will in us. That's the difference. So every act that you do, yet you call him into your acts, it's a divine act because it's an act of God. And whatever God does has no beginning, no end, whereas human acts have a beginning and an end. So if I call him into, I'm drinking a glass of water, say, Jesus, drink this glass of water in me. That's a divine will act that's going to, it's a eternal act. It will never come to an end. If I put my I love you on things, it's not me putting my I love you on every leaf, on every tree. If I desire that, it's Jesus in me putting an I love you on every leaf, on every tree to the Father. And then I love you will cry out to the Father for all eternity from me. I love you, God. I love you, God. I love you, God. That's a gift from Jesus, that he puts it on there for me. I just have to desire it. He does the work.
I think that's the key thing here. Desire it. Because
desire. It's all about desire.
The flame of love is exactly the same. I don't know if you're familiar with the flame of love. The unity.
Yeah, we pray the flame of love. We pray it every night at the community rosary. We do the flame of love rosary. Yes.
And this is all about unity. This is all about in union with God. And sisters, for those maybe who maybe not that really religious, or, like I say, are simple people, don't know a lot about our faith, and who want to maybe consider entering into the divine will, how would you, in your opinion, what would be the best way they would enter into the divine will and get to know more about this?
Reading the volumes, and you can get them on internet. You can contact people to help you with that, to find it. I know we've been listening right now to Frances Hogan, who's from Ireland, and she gives beautiful talks on all the volumes, and we listen at the noon meal, and she's excellent. So, there are great teachers out there, some really good teachers teaching the divine will. But I would say the best way to learn it is to read it, even more than have somebody teach you about it. You got to read the volumes yourself, because God speaks to your heart. And, if you just listen to teachings about it, but you never read it, you're really not going to learn how to live in it. But you got to do it on a daily basis. Read the volumes on a daily basis, and you will learn to live it. There's I know I have a little book here. It's put together by Tony Hickey, who's from Ireland, but he explains the divine will in a nutshell. I call it a short explanation, but to tell us all about. There's this woman in America that had 7 children, and she wrote something called the Drop Book that even explains it even better. But it's really for adults. Her children drew pictures in the book, but it's more of an adult book to really teach you what the divine will really is. So I always suggest to people, read the Drop Book before you read the volumes, or read Tony Hickey's book before you get into the volumes, so you can get an understanding of what it is before you actually start reading it. But you read it, and you read it slowly. You don't have to rush with it. Take your time. And when I first started reading it, I didn't understand everything, and I'd read one sentence sometimes 2 or 3 times. And if I didn't understand at that point, I'd just keep reading, and then somewhere else it would be repeated in a different way, the same teaching. And then I would understand it, So you don't give up, you just keep reading. When I first started reading, I thought, this is too good to be true. Is this really real? And the devil was trying to tempt me to stop reading it, but I just persevered. I kept reading it anyway. And then that stopped, and I realized, no, this is real. This is from God. This is a great gift. And this is what's changing my spiritual life like nothing else had in the past.
That's the one thing it will definitely do. It will change you from the inside out. And once you start picking up these writings of Luisa, they will blow your mind. There's no doubt about it. They will blow your mind. So if there's anything else, sisters, personally, that you want to share with us, I think because personal testimony is always the greatest thing to share with others. Is there anything that you would like to share more about how this divine will has helped you in your lives?
For me, I was 8 years old when I was first introduced to the divine will. So my mom, she had learned about it a year before me. So she first told me about it on my first communion. So for me, what got me into the divine will, what helped me to start the building block of understanding the divine will is basically the acts and rounds, because my whole life I've been very Franciscan. I had a great love for animals, and so I loved dearly St. Francis of Assisi, and St. Clare of Assisi is my favorite saint. So when I was trying to understand, listen to what the divine will was, the connection that I made that helped me to get into it was, it made me think of St. Francis's prayer, brother, sun, sister, moon, and this and that. And through that, it helped me to understand, like Mother was saying, you place your I love you on every leaf, every tree, every branch. So for me, it helped me to see more of God in his creation. And like you said, that the writings made the world come alive, more colorful, more vibrant. I was able to, that also helped me seeing more and wanting to praise and thank God for eternity, for all that he gives us. And so for me, it was that, it helped me to try to find more things throughout the world, seeing more of God, of Jesus inside of each and every one that I come across with, and in all of creation. And so I don't know, that's how it helped me in the very beginning. And now, and then growing up with it, it's just very beautiful. And it's true what Mother said, is that it is timeless. It's true. Like you can read it like many times or more, and even if you read it like for a second time, go around, and then and it's true. You have certain things that pop up, but that's the way that the Lord is speaking to you, because through the volumes, it's like the scriptures. that sometimes when you're reading the Bible story, you're reading the same Bible story, but for some reason on that day, a certain verse is speaking to you, but in the other days it didn't. That's the same thing with the divine will, because with Jesus, like we creatures, we need to be told over and over again certain things. Let's face it, we're not really that bright. We don't get it. So with him, like no matter which volume you're reading, no matter how many times you've read it, but the Lord speaks to each and every one of us individually. That's why it is true. It is important that that's the best way to understand the divine will, is just by reading it, because Jesus forms everyone differently. It's not like a cookie cutter thing. Everyone is unique in their own way. Everyone has a certain mission. So therefore Jesus, Our Lady, and the saints and the angels are going to work with each and every soul in a different way. So
God's presence is in all of his creation.
mhm.
So, but creation doesn't have a voice. So he wants us to put our voice and give the love back that he's given to us in all these things he created for us. Everything is a gift that he's created for us, but he wants us to return that gift to him. We have nothing to give God unless he gives it to us first. But his presence is within all of that. That's his love is in all of those things. He's throwing his love to us through creation, and he just wants us to return that love to him. That those things don't have a voice. He wants us to be the voice of all creation, to give him the glory that he deserves for all that he created to give us as gift.
And that's even in the divine office,
Mhm.
on Sundays where it says, sun and moon, bless the Lord, rain and snow, bless the Lord. It's a litany of all this creation blessing the
Yes.
Lord. And so it's beautiful when you're reading the Psalms, when you're reading the Bible, and you're reading the divine will, and you just see it all connect.
It all comes together.
Yeah, it comes together.
One thing I also like the divine will is not, Sister Scholastica mentioned about being Franciscan, and I don't have any specific spirituality. I love all the saints. That's why I joined the Benedictine sisters. And the Benedictine sisters in Texas, where I used to live, they were the ones who introduced me to the divine will. And when they told me about it, I was like, Mother, I was skeptical. I was like, this is heretic. And I was so scared about it in the beginning, but I persevered reading it. And the more I read about it, like Sister Scholastica said, it grows with you. Like at first you have this fear, and then you just don't stop, you persevere, and it grew in me, and I gained understanding. And the more I read it, it grew with me. So I'm learning new each time I read it. And you don't have to be a specific spirituality. This is not a spirituality, it's a way of life.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Gloria Marie. The first time I read the Divine Will was in my college year. I was in the third year of nursing school. It was the first day of my internship. So I just grab a book out of the bookshelf because it took more than an hour and a half. More than an hour and a half. So I just grabbed something just to read on the bus. And it was the Virgin Mary book, The Kingdom of the Divine Will. Just out of nowhere, out of blue, it just came. And when I asked my parents, my family around, nobody knew where it came from. So when I just started reading it, I just fell in love with it, just blew my mind. And after I read just few paragraphs, I had to close the book. It was just too much. The joy, the love that Our Lady.
No, sister, that's what happened to me.
Oh,
That's exactly what happened to me. I'm going, this is too much. I have to close it. It's almost like how I would describe is you're almost touching heaven.
Yeah.
And we're not ready for that just yet. I'm not ready for it just now. But that's exactly what happened to me.
Uh-huh.
I was just, oh no, this is because I remember when I first came, an avid reader of C.S. Lewis, and the way C.S. Lewis writes just blows my mind. But this took me to a whole new level.
Yes.
So friends, when I want to say this to you, when you do pick it up and you do begin to read, bear with it, because it will grab you in a way that probably nothing has grabbed you before.
Yeah.
And you need to, as you say, sisters, we need to persevere with it, because it truly is a gift beyond measure. Exactly. That's how I see the gift of the divine will. So it's all very exciting for us right now.
Our Lord told Luisa too, when you read it sometimes, all the time, he's with you in a special way and you feel his presence. And I think that's where you get all excited over sometimes. And the same thing happened to me. I get all excited, I had to stop and just just enjoy nature and I just couldn't read him anymore. You go through, you have these little experiences, these moments, you know, because he's with you and you feel in his presence, and you feel in his presence in the words, in the truth that he gave Luisa.
So that was time like when I was like rediscovering my faith, kind of like convergent, and also that's the same year I knew that I have religious vocation. And then that's when Our Lady gave me the Divine Will book. And it was just beautiful. And it's another way to know the Divine Will is reading the Virgin Mary book, because it consists of 30 or 31 days. So every day Our Lady she's taking us hand in hand, like she's leading us to a journey to be with God. And she's showing us like this heavenly life. And she's saying that, you know, this is life for you. This is what's meant to be, like what's meant for you to live. And this is really beautiful, just beautiful life to see and to know that this is what we lost because of our like original sin, because of our human will. And you will realize how what effects the human will does on our life. And yes. So every moment she is taking us to the eternal life, and we don't have to wait until we die. She's saying that, you know, it can start, the eternity starts from here, from now. And as you read the Divine Will, it's like you are tasting the peace of heaven every day, every moment you can be with God.
And that's why he gave us the Our Father. We've been praying it for 2,000 years. Thy will be done, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So it's the fulfillment of the prayer of the Our Father.
And he told Luisa he relived every person's life to the fullest perfection. You know, they said if all the books would be written of what Jesus did while he was on earth, they couldn't be contained on the earth. That's because he relived in detail every person's life to perfection. And all the things we should have done that we didn't do, he did. And so we can take those divine lives that he relived for each one of us and give those divine lives back to him.
And reclaim what we have lost.
I actually found out about the Divine Will only a year and a half ago. I was living in Medjugorje, as I'm Croatian, and I was living in the Cenacolo community. And so because I got sick from COVID, I had to be in bed, you know, and that by the providence of God, I read the booklet. I received the booklet and I read it. And I mean, I read it like, it's very short, right away. And I really remember that moment. It was really mind-blowing. It was so incredible and fantastic. But I was thinking, like, is this real? And thank God we had the confessor, Italian confessor, Don Vincenzo, who I asked him, like, is this Luisa Piccaretta, the gift of living in the Divine Will, is this like a good thing? What do you think? And actually, he said yes. She like his grandmother knew her, and like everybody knew from the place of his origin that she's a saint. Like she was a living saint, you know, a great mystic and all. So I got that confirmation, and I only had this book. We didn't have anything, like we couldn't use internet and all these things in the Cenacolo community. And I just started to pray that way, how it is described in a book. And everything suddenly changed. Like not my, only my mentality, my way of looking things also in prayer and all, but outside things started to change.
Yeah.
I mean, in an incredible way. Like for a long time, I was waiting to be sent to a convent. I wanted to go to the Mother Teresa's community. I just, you know, started to pray like it is described here, like in 3 steps, you know, and I was telling about it to everyone because I just felt it's so important that everybody gets to know about it.
And I right away, even only reading this booklet, I kind of saw a strong connection actually with the gifts of living in the divine will and the book of Revelation. I mean, and also the Song of Songs, how really Jesus is waiting for us, for all souls, to get ready to be his spotless bride, you know, to purify ourselves and really, you know, stop being like closed in ourselves, but really this change of perspective that I experienced was like having an ant view of the things, like going by my own business and like ants, actually, you know, even like praying for the good things and all, but kind of really changing this perspective that it's not, you know, this possibility not only to be in yourself, but to be in him, like it is described in here, like to pray, to enter into Jesus, to transform yourself in him, and to do the acts, like taking possession of acts that you find in Jesus, and give glory and reparation and love to God,
Yeah.
that is due to him, you know?
Well, thank you. You know, there's so much in this. There's so much to learn, so much to discover. And I just want to thank you all for joining me today, because I know you're busy there in Medjugorje. You want to be part of the schedule. So thank you for joining us. How can people find out more about your ministry? Do you have a website that they can check you out, or?
Yes, what is it? The Daughters of Divine
Daughters of Divine Will
Daughters of Divine Will
at gmail.com.
Okay, and what we'll do is we'll put a link to your website in the description underneath this video. But look, again, thank you all for joining me. It's wonderful to see you all. And I just want to also thank you for what you do for us, because you're in the background praying and doing all the things that we can't do. And I just have great respect for our wonderful nuns. I really do. So thank you again for joining me today. It's been wonderful to meet you all and to hear your stories about how God has touched you through the divine will. And we hope that many people will be touched by watching this today.
Well, it was great being with you. Thank you so much. And we just pray for all of you who are listening, that you will embrace this great gift, that your life will be transformed through it all, and you become that great saint that God desires you to be.
Thank you so much, sisters. Thank you.